United States, the 1880. If you open a map and drift your gaze along the eastern states into the Midwest, you'll see towns swelling along rail lines and river bends, and on their edges, broad hospital complexes rising from lawns and trees. In their day, they were called asylums, a period term for large public hospitals that followed a quiet idea. Let light and air steady the day. Let routine hold the night. Within those halls, ledgers were kept, letters were sent, and simple schedules gave shape to time. In the first minutes, we'll stay oriented. By minute 2, we'll place a few of these hospitals on the map, pins tracing a modest line from the coast toward the prairie. By minute 4, we'll open a gentle architectural sketch, the Batwing Plan, showing how long wards fanned out to capture sunlight and cross-ventilation. By minute 6, we'll turn a single page in a ward ledger, names redacted, where a plain entry notes an admission, a walk in the airing court, and an evening hymn. We'll keep our language respectful and sleep safe. The word asylum appears here as it did in the 19th century, and references to contested practices in later decades will be kept to neutral context only. No graphic detail, no shocks, just the feel of corridors at dawn, careful writing in ink, and the warmth of orderly rooms. For now, let the wind, let the floorboards settle, and let the lamps hold steady in their glass. Let's step from the map to the first foundation. Hospitals of this kind were often built just beyond the tight ring of streets, where town sound softened and space allowed the buildings to breathe. You could approach by a short rail spur or a road that left the main turnpike, pass a gatehouse, and see the front elevation widen across a lawn. The facade was formal but not severe. Long bands of windows, a central doorway, and wings that reached out at gentle angle, as if the house itself were showing you which way the day would turn. Edges mattered. Out here, the air moved more freely. There was room for kitchen gardens and orchards, for paths that curved around airing courts enclosed by brick walls, for a pump shed and a greenhouse glazed against the late frost. A patient arriving from the station would feel the shift in pace as the carriage left the hubbub of the town and entered a road lined with young maples. The clop of hooves grew measured, the gate creaked, and the yard opened like a quiet breath. Somewhere to the side, a laundry's tall windows exhaled pale steam that thinned and vanished. The Kirkbride Plan, an idea more than a single blueprint, favored order you could sense without being told. Rooms followed a predictable rhythm, administration at the center, wards radiating so that windows took the sun, workrooms tucked where they were needed, and gardens never far from view. A visitor would see attendants cross the lawn with a basket of clean linen, a gardener staking tender stems near a warmed wall, and a figure at an upstairs window, not staring down, but simply watching the light drift across the grass. Along the gravel, small stones hissed beneath. On a clear day, you could hear the river from a distant bend, or the horn of a morning train drifting like a thread of sound across the fields. The buildings used that openness to their advantage. Air moved along corridors that were scrubbed and aired, and windows, tall and narrow, gathered brightness and let it spill along the floorboards. The philosophy sounded simple on paper: light, air, routine. But here it became a texture you could touch. A shaft of sun on the newel post, a draft finding the edges of a door, the faint scent of soap where the hallway turned. Beyond the main facade, a narrower path led to the intake pavilion. It wasn't grand. A bench under a little porch gave travelers a place to gather themselves. You could read a motto or a line from the hospital's statement of purpose, posted discreetly where it would be seen, but not faced like a test. Inside, a clerk's pen laid clean strokes in a register, and a small clock, its hands shaped like leaves, kept time with a low, agreeable tick. The day was not yet divided into hours and duties. It was simply beginning, and the house seemed to lean toward it, prepared. An airing court stood to one side, its gateway open to the yard but sheltered by a brick wall. Inside, the gravel was raked smooth, and a bench sat in a patch of sun. The court looked plain to the hurried eye, but it held onto quiet in a way no parlor could. In winter, frost traced the wire on the wall. In summer, vines embroidered the brick with green. The place taught a lesson without speech. Keep to gentle measure, let stiff weather pass, come out again when it does. As you crossed the lawn, lanterns still burned in a few ground floor windows, not for brightness now, but as a habit of watchfulness. The glass held a small gold glow that said someone had looked in and would again, and the room would be ready for whomever needed it. Far off, a bell marked the hour. Voices remained low. The house breathed in. Now we'll cross the threshold and walk the front hall. The road narrows as the carriage draws up to the gatehouse, and the motion that carried us from town to lawn gives a small, natural pause. The driver sets the brake with a soft click. A porter in a neat coat steps forward, not hurried, not ceremonious, and the last tug of street noise releases like a knot. Here, movement yields to record. Names are written, not to fix a person in place, but to give them footing inside the day. The gate eases, hinges oiled, and the wheels roll once more across gravel that hushes under weight. Within the front hall, the air is cooler and still. Light falls long across a checker of stone, and the smell of fresh soap and old wood steadies the senses. On the wall, pegs wait for coats and hats. The attendants do not reach to take them at once. They offer a bench, a breath, a small tray with warm tea, steam curling like a quiet thread. Travel settles out of the shoulder. Somewhere down the corridor, a clock tones a single, rounded note, and the hall's own pulse seems to find it in time. The registry sits on a high desk, with thick paper smoothed to the pen. A clerk dips the nib, shakes off a shining bit, and draws a line for the day. He asks for the simple things: name, date, a town in tidy script, and no more than is needed. The writing is more than a record. It's a gesture of inclusion, a way of saying the house knows you are here and will keep pace with you. Close by, a small drawer is open, and a numbered tag is set aside for a parcel of belonging. A watch, rings, a purse of coin, kept for safekeeping until the owner asks for them again. The key is turned once, not perfunctory, not suspicious, only exact. The distance to town grows as the inside rhythm begins. You can hear it in the patterns of feet along the corridor, an attendant's steady stride, the lighter tap of a page carrying folded linen, the slower return of someone who has already learned the turn. It is not strictness, it is consistency. Coats hung where coats belong, a traveling bag set down and labeled, a letter placed in the tray for posting with the afternoon stack. The hall invites the street to become a memory, and the room ahead to become the new horizon. By the door, a lantern hangs, still lit from the early hour though daylight has risen. Its flame does not command attention. It keeps company with the clock and the register, a trio that tells the day in 3 languages: light, time, and ink. Past the hall, the floor shifts from stone to boards that give a mild answer to each step, a reminder that people pass here, and the building knows it. Windows along the stairwell admit washed light that drifts and settles like quiet dust. A fresh pot of tea is carried past, its lid rattling once, then steady. The street does not vanish. It simply recedes behind one layer of pattern after another. A greeting from the matron, a card placed in a slot by the door, a brief glance over the list of afternoon duties, walks, reading hour, a visit for those expecting it. Routine is not a fence, but a series of stepping stones. Taken together, they reassure more than they restrain. When the carriage leaves again, the wheels sound smaller than they did on arrival, not because the gate has closed against the world, but because the hall has opened within it. Between the desk and the first long corridor stands a final quieting place, a low table with a dish of fresh water for hands, a towel folded thin as paper, a comb set beside a small mirror. This is where travel ends. The face that looks back is not the one that left the station or the street. It is the one the day will carry, lighter by the dust of the road and steadied by the hall's measured breath. We'll turn into the ward where windows meet the trees. At the end of the corridor, just beyond a quiet bend, the mail desk occupies a modest alcove. The clerk's hands move with unhurried care, weighing envelopes and tying bundles with string. An outgoing sack leans against the wall, its canvas softened by use. An incoming one rests on the table, its mouth cinched and sealed with red twine. On the ledger's ruled line, a column waits for the day's marks. Letters here are not interruptions, they are threads. Some arrive with the neatness of a stationer's best, paper ivory pale and edges deckled like lace. Others bear the scuff and dust of distance, their corners softened, their ink a little faded. The clerk warms a stick of wax over a candle, just enough to soften, not drip, and sets a seal with a quiet turn. The brief scent of resin and smoke lingers and then clears, leaving only paper and the faint tang of iron gall ink. There is a cadence to the week. The post rider is expected on certain afternoons. Visits are arranged on certain days. The chapel bell confirms the hour with a tone that seems to carry further than the wall. On a table by the door, a small frame displays notices: the next hymn selection, a change to visiting hour, a line reminding readers to return books. The voice is gentle, written in a steady hand. The visiting parlor is a room that asks for moderation and gives comfort in return. Chairs sit a polite distance apart, their backs polished by the year. A fire, if the weather warrants it, keeps a steady glow. If not, the windows admit a light that shifts across the carpet in soft rectangle. Conversations here are not pressed. They unfold with the understanding that time is held for them. A mother's news, a brother's account, the ordinary stitches of a family's life. Between these arrivals, the house is not silent, but it is selective. The rural hush fills the spaces the city might have given to wheel rattle and shop call. A page in the alcove copies the addresses carefully, licking a finger to turn each slip. The outgoing bag is closed with a practiced twist, and the clerk runs a thumb along the seam, checking for stray corners. Even the paper rustle seems to have learned the house's manner. Not secretive, not stiff, simply considerate. Letters received are read in places suited to reading. A bench near the south window, a table under a hanging lamp, a spot in the airing court. If a letter is long, it is read twice, once for the sense, once for the shape of the handwriting. Replies are begun with the same attention to small things. Today's date, the weather beyond the glass, a line that mentions the book that was borrowed. The clerk will provide an envelope when the ink has dried. The wax will seal again with that quiet little turn. Where messages cannot travel by paper, they travel by bell and card. The chapel posts a list each week, hymns and reading, a note of thanks to the sewing circle. The library adds a slip for the new donation, stacked by topic, then by size. A garden notice appears in spring reminding walkers to keep to the gravel. None of it demands, all of it steadies. As dusk gathers, lanterns appear again in windows, not to carry the day forward but to hold it in a gentle frame. A nurse passes the mail alcove and checks the tray. The clerk, satisfied with the column, closes the ledger on its ribbon and sets the pen to rest. The outgoing sack will leave with the cart at first light. The incoming one will arrive with the afternoon. The space between is not empty. It is a calm in which the house remembers what has been said and makes room for what will be said next. Inside the ward, the day opens with simple ritual. Morning begins with small sounds that belong to morning alone. The soft knock at a door frame, the whisper of a curtain drawn back, the clink of a pitcher against a basin. The light is pale at first, a soft square pressed upon the floorboards, and then it widens. Water is poured with steady care, the stream catching the light. Towels are folded in thirds, a comb rests on a dish, and a bar of soap leaves a clean, faint scent. In this rhythm, waking feels less like a sudden change and more like a gentle inclination toward readiness. The corridor breathes its own low hush. Slippers pass on polished boards with a familiar sigh. Keys move once, then still. By the time we reach the dining room, the lamps have been turned down to a glow. The room holds a long table with places marked by simplicity. A spoon, a bowl, a linen napkin. A kettle knows when the water is ready by the soft lift of its lid. Bread rests beneath a cloth, the crust crackling faintly as it cools. The first spoon meets the side of a bowl with a round, reassuring note. Conversations find their level, a low exchange of courtesy, a brief remark about the sky. It is the type of talk that sets down roots without needing to be remembered word for word. After breakfast, a small library cart appears, its wheels wrapped so the floor will not protest. The books are arranged by size to keep the rows from tipping, then by topic for those who will ask. We choose a quiet corner. Pages turn with a sound like distant leaves. The reading is sometimes aloud, sometimes in the mind's own voice. But either way, the pace belongs to the hour. A passage about gardens leads the eye back toward the airing court. When a book returns to the cart, the hand that returns it lingers a moment to smooth the cover. as if closing the day's chapter made the day itself feel more orderly. The airing court waits beyond a door that takes a steady push and then yields. Gravel gives underfoot with its mild hiss. The wall is warm or cool, depending on the hour. Benches hold the warmth of whoever sat there last. A quiet transfer from one life to another. We walk without keeping count, following a path that knows where the currents of wind will spare the face. Even on days when the air is brisk, the court gives a small gift. When we return, cheeks carry a hint of weather. The room notices and makes welcome. Afternoon brings quieter tasks, mending a hem where a stitch has walked away, placing fresh water in a pitcher, straightening the edge of a coverlet so corners agree with corner. These are not chores so much as invitations to let attention rest on what is under the hand. Time is divided by tea rather than by bells. A tray arrives, and the cups find their saucers with a click that is both precise and forgiving. The hallway lamp is trimmed, its glass cleaned with a cloth that leaves no sign of itself behind. When lamps are turned gently up again, the house looks back at us from each pane. Lanterns in window becoming small anchors against the dusk. When night gathers, the hymn is not a performance, only a way of speaking. A few voices begin, the rest follow if they wish. The sound travels as far as the corridor needs it to, and no farther. The room recovers its quiet in a way that feels like permission rather than instruction. Doors close with considered hand. The last check of the lamp confirms what the day has already proven. The flame holds, the glass is clear, and the hour can pass in safety. We'll drift to the outer buildings, where work keeps steady time. On certain afternoon, the front path shows a quiet procession that is older than any rule book. Neighbors arriving with what hands and hearts can spare. A small wagon pulls up with a stack of folded quilts, each one a map of careful stitches. Beside them, a basket of books leans against the seat, spines faded by sun and use. The gatekeeper notes the hour in a narrow ledger, not to weigh the gift, but to remember the time. When we lift the quilts inside, they carry a faint scent of clean cotton and cedar. When the books are set on the hall table, their worn corners already seem to know where they belong. The sewing circle prefers the wide room that faces south. Sun falls in a long stripe across the table, and thread shows its true color against the light. Voices keep to an easy level as needles pass in a steady rhythm, down, up, across. One hem is mended, while another is basted. A girl from town reads aloud from a borrowed volume, careful not to lose her place. Now and then, the group pauses to listen to the breeze work at the window latch. On the next day, the music corner wakes without fanfare. An organ stands with its back to the wall, polished so the wood gathers the room into its sheen. The pumper's tread is feather-light. The air inside the bellows rises and falls like a measured breath. What follows is not a recital, merely a handful of hymns or airs everyone recognizes the melody glides down the corridor, softening as it goes, not seeking to fill rooms, but to touch their threshold. For those who sit near the door, the music arrives braided with hallway sounds. Donations find their way to quiet corners, as if they have always lived there. A set of shawls folded above the radiator, to be reached for when evening enters by the window. A tin of tea labeled in a careful hand. A stack of writing paper tied with ribbon for letters that deserve a clear page. The clerk who minds the modest storket board works with a pencil stub and a columned sheet, noting what came in and where it went. It is a way to make sure each gift fulfills its simple promise. Warmth here, comfort there. Seasonal fairs stitch the house to the town with threads that hold. In spring, seedlings arrive with tags stuck into the soil. In autumn, jars of preserves glint like jewels in the afternoon sun. A table near the door carries a bowl for small coin and slips for larger pledges, each one a marker of a bond lightly carried. These are not performances. They are the way a place says to its neighbors, "We are here," and the neighbors answer, "We know," and that is enough. All through these exchanges, the house keeps its pace. Lanterns begin to kindle in windows. As the light leans toward the sewing circle folds its cloth. The organ's last chord relaxes into wood and air. Outside, the wagon's wheel rolls through the gravel with the same small hiss as always. Nothing is demanded. Everything offered finds its place. When the door closes, it does so gently, the latch seating without complaint. The quilts, now warm with new handling, rest on a shelf. A book opens where it is wanted. In the ledger, the clerk draws a line beneath the days list and sets down the pencil. What remains is not the sum of item, but a shape of care, a shelter made from ordinary acts that fit together without strain. Now to the engines of the house. Boiler, laundry, kitchen. Beneath the quiet rooms, a second rhythm keeps the house warm and fed. In the boiler room, iron bellows breathe in a measured way, sending heat into the run of pipes. Valves turn with a willing resistance, a hand on each wheel, learning the exact quarter turn that balances warmth and prudence. The water gauge holds steady, its glass bright even in the dim. The attendant's pencil marks the hour, a neat stroke that joins others in a column as regular as a heartbeat. At daybreak, the laundry stirs, not with clamor but with a hum like a distant hive. Tubs fill, linen sinks and rises. The press creaks once, then settles into a calm, repeating sigh. Steam carries a clean scent, and the long tables gather stacks of folded cloth. Carts, their wheels muffled, roll along the corridor in a soft procession. An attendant checks the list, ward, count, date, then touches each stack with the back of a hand. In the kitchen, the first loaves cool under clean cloths, the crusts faintly singing as they shed their heat. A kettle lifts its lid with a bright nudge of steam, then sighs closed again. The baker's bench is dusted, the scales zeroed, and the next measure begins. The stove door opens with a low iron voice. It closes with the confidence of a well-fitted latch. Ladles, spoon handle, the edge of a pan, every surface holds a soft, worked-in shine. When the service hatch turns, a tray glides through without fuss and departs. Care travels with these trays. At changeover, the night report sits waiting, its pages trimmed square. The day charge reads in a quiet space. No audience, no rush, just the words and what they ask for. A watch kept, a note carried there, a reminder to adjust the draft east stairway. On the desk, a lamp throws a low circle, a companion to the ledger and the clock. Lanterns, lit where they are needed, mark the day's steady turns. Attendants move at a pace the house will accept. A hand at a shoulder, a small tilt of a cup, a fresh jug at the washstand. None of it quick, none of it slow. The service tunnel, set below the busy routes, carry heat and trays where weather cannot interfere. Above, a window is lifted the width of a hand to let spring air cross the corridor. Below, the boiler man wipes the gauge clean with a cloth kept for that one job. Between them, the building lives like a musical instrument played by many hands. When noon approaches, the carts grow lighter. A bell, more a suggestion than a command, invites the kitchen to its next measure. A page oils a hinge that began to speak too sharply and writes its location in a small book. Order is not hard, it is attentive. It hears the faintest change in a common sound and leans toward it kindly. Outside, the sky holds its own work, a bank of cloud trailing into light, a gull crossing above the river. The house answers in the language it knows. Warm pipes, clean cloth, bread, water, and the written word. When the hour turns, it does so on hinges that have learned to go without wakefulness at every turn. We'll pause for a few small scenes of daily life. In a quiet corner of the long ward, a chair has been turned to meet a rectangle of sun. The elder who keeps that seat knows when the light arrives. Hands rest palm down on the lap. A book sits within reach, open to a place marked by a ribbon that keeps its fold. The room arranges itself around the chair in a way that says, "Here, for now, let the world be simple." A few doors along, where a bay gives space to a low table, a pair of children read. The book is chosen for its pages rather than its plot. Drawings of gardens and birds and bridges move the eye gently forward. Fingers trace the lines of leaves, the arch of a span across water, the curve of lettering. When a child looks up to ask what a word sounds like, the nurse gives it with a smile. Outdoor, the greenhouse wears its own seed. Frost on the panes in winter turns to beads of water that trickle down when the sun finds the glass. In spring, the smell of damp soil holds in the air like a promise. Inside, rows of seedlings align in small trays. Each label is written in a different hand, but all are rooted in the same care: parsley, thyme, mint. A hat hangs on a peg by the greenhouse door. It has the shape of the heads that have borrowed it. The brim is friendly rather than stern. A scarf lies beside it, clean and thick, waiting for the next chilly hour. A path leads from the greenhouse to a bench that knows both sun and shade. Sitting there, one hears the building without seeing it. A kettle's chirp, the roll of a cart. Back in the corridor, a cart with a square of mending waits beside a window. A sleeve asks for a seam. A hem asks for one careful pass of the needle to catch what has come loose. The person who picks up the work lets the cloth tell its own story. Wear, wash, wear again. The small scissor snips once and is satisfied. The piece returns to its place with a little more dignity than it had an hour before. These scenes do not declare themselves important. They accumulate until the house feels as if it has many small hearts beating quietly in many rooms. A lantern rests unlit on a sill, clean and ready, reminding the day that evening will come and it will be met without fuss. Across the grounds, a wagon and the day's mail arrive. The wagon pulls up at the service gate with a sound that belongs to its business. Wheel on gravel, harness leather, the soft blow of a horse that has learned this yard. The driver steps down, checks the list pinned to the crate, and waits for the porter to answer. Greetings are short and good-natured. A wooden stamp thumps once on a receipt, and a pencil traces a line to close the sum. Cabbages reveal their pale hearts under green leaves. Jars in straw clink softly as they are set on a shelf where the light will not bleach their color. In the pantry, the shelves are arranged with a librarian's calm. Flour to the left, then bean, then jars of fruit preserved at the peak of last summer's brightness. Labels are turned out, so a glance will do what a search would only trouble. A cloth lies on the counter for the parcel that will become today's soup stock. The post delivery arrives with the reliable of a line drawn straight. The bag leans into the corner until the knot is untied. Envelopes slide out like small promises kept. The clerk takes each in hand, measures the address against the ledger's list, and places it in a shallow tray lined with paper. Outgoing mail sits in its own tray, sealed and stacked. The wax, still faintly warm, has settled itself with a neat ring where the seal touched and left its memory. The tray will meet the next cart, and the next cart will meet the road, and the rhythm goes on. Some deliveries come with the seed, a sack of coal in winter, a hamper of bulbs in spring. Others arrive when called for, a bundle of lamp wicks, a fresh run of blue-lined paper. The house minds its needs without impatience, neither hoarding nor waiting too long. When a thing is used, a mark is made. When the mark reaches the place that calls attention, the need is answered. At the end of the circuit, the driver climbs back to the wagon and sets the horse to a comfortable walk. The gate swings in and meets its jam with a contented note. The porter closes the ledger, one full page thicker than it was in the morning. In the corridor, the cart from the kitchen glides by, bowls quiet inside their stack. The lantern in the window near the pantry remains unlit in the afternoon brightness, but the glass catches the sun and holds a small glimmer that resembles a promise. If the day darkens sooner than expected, the lamp will keep its place against the pane, a modest star to steer by between the yard and the door. Night gathers. Lanterns mark the watch. When evening leans into the halls, the day does not stop. It simply lowers its voice. A nurse on the first round touches each lamp with a practiced hand. The lanterns in windows across the front face glow one by one, as if the building has taken a careful breath. Outside, the lawn darkens by degrees. Inside, that darkness is met gently, not pushed back with glare, but outlined by points of warm light. Keys move in circles measured and unshowing. The watch makes its way along the corridor with a step that avoids creak boards. It pauses at each door for the length of a slow count, listens for the quiet signs of rest, and moves on. The clock in the stairwell marks the hours with a voice that never becomes familiar enough to ignore. At the top of the hour, the watch notes its path in the book. Time, ward, condition. Small words that mean all is as it should be. Below stairs, the service tunnels carry warmth and trade. Their doors are painted the color of quiet, their latches well-oiled, their floors swept. A cook in the night kitchen spreads cloth over tomorrow's dough and turns the lamps low. In a corner, the kettle holds a slow simmer. A cup is set on its saucer with a click that claims only itself. Out in the grounds, a single lantern moves along the path to the gatehouse. The gatekeeper lifts the lamp by its ring to check the lock and replaces it on the hook by the window. Inside, A small notice reminds the watch to close the upper transom. If the wind rises from the north, it is not likely tonight, but the house likes to think ahead for those who sleep under its roof. Lantern in windows is a way of remembering that someone is always looking outward as well as inward. In the long ward, breath becomes the dominant sound. It arranges itself into a pattern that includes a page turning and a distant drawer closed as if it were ending a sentence softly. The night notes gather in the ledger with a courtesy that is part craft, part care. Toward the small hour, the building enters a deeper stillness that is not empty. Pipes murmur lightly as they settle. A window caught by a change in wind taps once and then grows still. When the watch passes the window again, the lantern's flame has the same steady shape it had before. The house trusts the hand that trimmed it. The hand trusts the lamp, and the lamp returns the trust by being exactly as it should be until morning. The last round before dawn is the most delicate. The watch tips its head to each door, as if greeting a friend who will wake later. The tunnel doors are latched. The night kitchen is quiet. The logbook lies open to the next page. At the stair, the watch touches the rail with a familiar palm. Light is already setting a pale line along the window. The lanterns prepare for their rest. We'll note the careful habits that kept order and safety. The house is not anxious, but it is attentive. Safety here is a set of habits, each small enough to be reliable. On a weekday morning, the bucket line drill begins with the soft ring of a bell. Attendants take their station. Buckets pass hand to hand in a rhythm that closes gaps. The line moves from pump to target and back again, a circular loyalty that uses water as a tool. When the bell sounds a second time, the buckets are returned to their hooks. Windows in long rooms are set with cords and sashes that have their own manner. A sash weight that chatters is an invitation to a note. A cord that frays is replaced before it is asked to prove its strength. The person who makes these rounds carries a tin of small tools and a book of small line. Each hinge that squeaked yesterday is quiet today. Occupancy charts hang at discrete points, a line for each room, an initial to confirm what the eye has already seen. Overcrowding is not a number here. It is a feeling the room itself resists. The chart is a promise to listen to that feeling. Doors are tested in both directions, not because anyone imagines a rush, but because a door should remember how to serve when asked from any side. On the roof, a ladder leans with the ease of long acquaintance. Its rungs carry the marks of many seasons, and its feet find the same place at the. From up there, the house is a geometry of chimneys and valley. The man who checks the flashing runs a gloved finger along the metal's edge and notes a seam to be warmed and pressed. Inside, the evening routine includes a tour of lights and stoves and lamps. Wick cutters lie where they belong. Chimneys stand clear and shining. No one chases safety. It is invited and given a chair. In the night, when a draft strays where it is not needed, a transom closes a little. The lantern in the window by the stair reflects itself once in the pane, then again in the polished rail. The sight is less a warning than a benediction. We are lit where we must be, and nowhere more. Precautions settle into the background the way a well-learned song does, familiar without becoming invisible. present without being insistent. They strengthen the calm rather than puncturing. This is what allows the other sounds to remain themselves. Pages, spoons, shoe, each sound a thread in a wider weave, held together by the hands that prepared it in daylight. With care in place, a calm interval return. Some days the weather itself keeps a softer ledger. After a week of wind, the air steps back, and the house hears a new emptiness that is not absence only. The airing courts open earlier. The path brooms lean at their usual angle. A robin makes a neat bounce across the gravel, and the sky sorts its clouds into modest strips. Inside, light housekeeping attends to edges. A fresh sheet finds a mattress with a practiced flick, corners folded like envelopes. A cloth at the window leaves no mark. On a sideboard, a pitcher of water is replaced with one a degree than the hand expected. The library trolley pauses longer than usual at a shelf where the slim volumes live. Out in the greenhouse, the bench holds trays of seed whose green feels almost audible. The soil keeps a faint damp shine that looks like a promise kept overnight. Names written on little flags announce themselves shyly. Sage, thyme, lavender. A brush of a finger along a leaf leaves a scent that is both the plant and also the memory of the plant. The corridor breathes like a person who has stopped halfway up the stairs to notice something. Voices stay low because they have no reason to rise. The bell that marks the hour rings a shade lighter. In the dining room, a cup is warmed in advance, and the tea poured into it is sipped. On a small table, the gardener has left a bowl of seeds he prefers to soak. They look like pebbles at first glance, like a mistake. Then, with the patient eye of the house, they begin to resemble what they are: beginnings. Someone sets the bowl in a square of sunlight, not because it is needed, but because sunlight is a kindness that costs nothing. The quiet interval is the part of the day that shows the difference between nothing happening and something going well. Not a story exactly, more a chapter without dialogue, where the reader looks up and understands a place. In this chapter, the house understands itself, and we understand the house, and the understanding rests the mind the way a clean pillow rests the head. At first light, doors open to a gentle morning. The light before sunrise has a discipline all its own. It lifts the shape of the building from the lawn as if unwrapping it, line by line. A bell gives one polite note, not wake up merely. It is time. Doors open with a sound carefully learned over months, so that they open exactly like this. The floor by the washstand is cool to the in a way that wakes no one but the person who stands there. Water slides into a basin and finds its round without splashing a drop. In the ward, beds are smoothed with the back of a hand, a small ripple pressed out with a palm. Windows lift the width of a hand to invite the air. Curtains are drawn back and caught with their ties, so they will stay where they are told. Along the corridor, brushes move across the boards with a whisper that settles dust. On the porch, benches gather their own congregation. A greeting follows the person rather than the clock, given when the person arrives. The path across the lawn seems to know a footstep's weight and gives back the smallest answer through the sole of the shoe. Distantly, the town stirs, but here the edge holds and filters those sounds until they are as soft as memory. By the gatehouse, a slip of paper is passed over the half door, a request for a book, a note about a visit, a thank you for a shawl. The gatekeeper pins it in the place where slips are pinned. The system is so simple that it goes almost unseen. Back inside, the morning tray meets hands that are ready for it. A cup nested in its saucer, a spoon placed where it can be found without looking, a slice of bread that breaks with a sound more encouraging than many speeches. The dining room uses light like a tool, and like a gift, it lands on the table and shows that every surface is as uncomplicated as it seems. If a word is needed for the quality of the hour, it is likely clean. Clean air, clean cup, clean window, a clean page waiting for whatever it is meant to receive. The lanterns are out now. Their chimneys stand clear and give the windows back to the day. In their glass, the lawn appears like a painting hung at the right height. The lamps do not mind. They will have their turn again this evening. Paths lengthen. Letters and visits are arranged. The grounds crew keeps a grammar the eye can read without learning it. Gravel is combed into evenness. Edges are squared where grass had tried a little ambition. The rake's tines speak in quiet syllable that improve the sentence. Along the drive, stones collected in a bucket provide punctuation where wheels have written too heavily. Inside the gatehouse, replies begin their small journey. The clerk unfolds the slips pinned from earlier and writes 2 lines on blue-lined paper, a calendar with squares too small for anything, but initials holds the week's shape. When a visit is noted, it is done in pencil until the hour is certain. When confirmed, it earns ink. At the carriage stop, a sign faces the lane with straightforward courtesy. Visitor 3 to 5 on the hour. No warnings, no lecture, only a request and the assumption that anyone reading it can be trusted. The driver of the afternoon trap tips his hat to the gate and receives news of the road. Letters answered in the morning meet the bag at midday. A reader who asked for the book about rivers gets the book about rivers. Someone who wished for a bit of lace finds a scrap laid inside the cover of her hymn book. When a visit brings a parcel, the square room near the front door becomes a pantry. Kindness for an hour. Reconnection does not need to be dramatic to be real. It can be a path that no longer tilts the foot sideways. A chair moved one place nearer the window by a person who noticed that the light changed. A hand finds another hand at the foot of the stairs as a courtesy, and the two smile as if the courtesy were the joke, though it is not a joke at all. A lantern in the front office sits in its customary niche even at noon, its glass not lit but not idle. When the sun does something worth remembering, the lantern borrows a bit of that. The office clock marks the top of the hour, and in the distance, the town bell answers. Nothing announces itself as connection, but everything that has been arranged for the day fits. And the sum is that we are linked, house to town, hand to hand, present to future in small drafts. In quiet corners, small wonders appear. Sometimes beauty visits in a way that the house seems to have planned, though it could not have. On the floor of the East Hall, a window throws a lattice of light so crisp the mind thinks of a basket. A broom leans near, and the person who picks it up chooses not to disturb the pattern. This is not neglect, it is discernment, cleaning the edges first, letting the center its hour. A chair in the reading room shows a scar where a leg split long ago. This week, a clamp and glue were called upon, and now the grain runs unbroken again. A palm passes over the repair, and gives it the little praise an honest fix deserves. The chair does not answer. It understands gratitude as weight rather than sound. On the library table, a ribbon found inside a book has been given purpose. It marks a place between chapters with a quiet insistence. The ribbon's edge is frayed where fingers worried it once, but the middle remains smooth and satin. Beside it, a pencil scratches a note in a margin, only a page number with an arrow. The arrow is a promise in either case. A sash latch that had become stubborn in damp weather receives a small rub of wax. It yields. The window lifts with the right sound, a soft pop of paint breaking its seal. Then the even slide of sash. Air enters in a way the room recognizes. A curtain lifts with a sigh. The lantern in the window smiles at its own reflection in the glass. Not all small wonders are seen. Some are heard. Two spoons tapping porcelain in an unplanned duet. The indecisive clatter of a pigeon on a sill. The minute crackle of a log in the great deciding which way to fall. Some are felt. Heat gathered in a windowsill through which fingers pass. The cool trace of a cup that sat quietly too long on the table and left a circle of dew. When evening comes, these things do not vanish. They report themselves to the day's end like children home from a game. Dusty, content, slightly proud. Tomorrow has its own wonders planned that none of us know about yet. And the house, being old enough to trust such things, arranges the chairs for whatever the next joy will be. Shared meals and music bring the day to an eclose. Evening returns the house to the table. The dining room gathers its own weather, warmth, a glow around the lamp shades, a companionable murmur. Bowls arrive, each the right weight in the hand. Bread breaks with a faint tumble of crumb that the napkin receives without offense. If a story is told, it is the kind that asks for no reply. In the corner stands a small instrument, a harmonium or a piano. After supper, someone sits. The first notes are reconnaissance, then confident. The tune moves through the room like an old friend who does not need to be introduced. Voices join not to perform, but to make the melody practical. Chairs are lifted a few inches and slid back with a care that respects both floor and chair. A cloth gathers the last of the crumbs and holds them as the basket once held bread. The librarian appears with a book under one arm and 3 to choose from in the other. A neighbor might step in then, with a knot of flowers for the mantel. The talk at the door is short and affectionate. News is exchanged. "You'll stay" is asked. For a moment is answered. A cup is fetched. The room admits this person, as if a chair had been left empty for them all evening by intent. Later, when the visitor stands to go, the latch will receive the door with pride. The lanterns in the windows glow steadily, their glass clean, their chimneys clear. Inside, the last song takes its turn. Someone's favorite line held a half-breath longer than the other. Then quiet return, which is not to say silent. The table remembers hands. The chairs remember backs. The air remembers voices. The room keeps all this the way a notebook keeps line. When the lamps are turned low, it is done as one caresses rather than as one corrects. The wicks learn, with repetition, exactly how brief the turn must be. Everything leans toward rest like a field of grasses, leaning one way under a wind. The week resumes its careful routines. Mornings restore the working outline. The mail tray arrives with fresh envelopes. The clerk sorts them with a glance. The market list is checked against the pantry's honest account of itself. The roof is looked after without making a topic of the roof. Policy pamphlets live in a drawer near the front office, their pages soft at the corner. Once a week, they are taken out and given a brief airing, not to fix anything, but to remember the promises the house has made. A pencil underlines nothing. It travels instead along the line the eye is traveling. Logs receive initials that are as distinct as face. No one pretends to be someone else. Each hand has its own way. The confidence this breeds is humble but robust. The book does not want to be lost. It makes itself findable by being itself. On the roof, a pair of eyes checks the lead where the chimney meets the slate. A fingertip runs along the seam, then comes away with only the clean fill that says it will hold. Down below, a chair that had wandered into the hall returns to its usual place. The lantern in the stair window shines brief as a cloud pulls aside. The market run returns with potatoes that still carry a dust born before this morning's harvest. The porter's neat script ties the numbers to the name and the names to the date. There are few miracles in this work, unless it counts as a miracle to do a thing yourself so many times that the world rests on it. In the office, a small bell rings. It is not the hour, it is the door. A new pamphlet asks for a home in the drawer, and the drawer welcomes it. The clerk initials the log and thinks briefly about where the pamphlet will be posted. Information travels the way water does in a calm stream. It arrives, passes where it should pass, and leaves the banks untroubled. We'll gather the thread softly and rest. If you trace the day we have walked, it follows a simple arc. A map in the hand, a house at the town's edge, windows set to greet the light, corridors that learn slippers by sound, gardens that answer without words. Letters find their way from desk to door, to gate and back again. Visits hold themselves like bowls that are exactly the right size for what they carry. In the quiet hours, lanterns in windows fulfill the modest promise they were made to keep. Architecture is not just walls and halls. It is a way of arranging time. The Batwing plan, the airing courts, the service tunnel, the kitchen's measured warmth. Together, they make a background that lets ordinary goodness happen. Records, registers, slips, and lists lend their steadiness. A page of initial becomes a music score of modest notes played well. Later decades would debate new methods and practices. Those debates belong to their own rooms in history and will remain there for tonight. Here we have stayed with the gentle part. Windows, paths, bread, letters, lamps. Many of these buildings have gone on to other lives. Museums, parks, archives. When we turn away from their facade, we can carry the simple geometry of their promise. Light where it is needed, air where it helps, routine that calms. For now, the lamps can be lowered and the ledger closed on its ribbon. The house remembers without effort. The garden keeps its counsel. The path will still be a path when morning asks for it. The house grows quiet. Only the air remains.